Welcome to week 2 of our study, Tending the Fire. And as we talk about solitude, I want you to know that for the Desert Fathers and Mothers, solitude was not the same thing as being totally alone and out of community, because at the peak of its popularity, there were 20,000, estimated to be 20,000 women and 10,000 men living in the deserts of Egypt, forming these communities dedicated to a simple lifestyle, disciplined practices in order to draw closer to God. And I want to focus today on some of the sayings of some of the desert mothers, because if there were actually more women than men, it's natural that some of them should have some things to say. The first one is from Amma Theodora, who said, "Just as trees cannot bear fruit if they have not stood before winter's storms, so it is with us." So that idea that that difficult things, we know this in our own faith lives, right? Difficult things are often what draw us into God's presence. It's not easy. Solitude might not be easy either, but it helps. And then Amma Sarah talks about kind of the spirit of solitude, that understanding that we stand before God alone and that we aren't dependent on others for a sense of self-worth. She writes, "If I prayed and asked God that all people should approve my conduct, I would find myself a penitent at the door of each one. I rather pray that my heart would be pure towards all." Right? It's another way of saying we can't make everybody happy. And if we try, we will just make some angry. But rather, our prayer needs to be that we will have a pure heart, a loving heart towards all people. So that heart of solitude is not dependent on the opinions of others, but their gaze is always towards God. And finally, we have a saying from Amma Matrona, who had was in a marriage with an abusive husband, and she also escaped into the desert from that relationship. And this is what she had to say: "We carry ourselves wherever we go and cannot escape temptation by mere flight. Many people living secluded lives on the mountain have perished by living like people in the world. It is better to live in a crowd and want to live a solitary life than to live a solitary life, but all the time belonging for company. Wherever we go, we take ourselves with us. We take our memories, we take our bad habits, our temptations with us, and we still must deal with the part of ourself that is unconverted. So we need to be able to overcome obstacles with God's help and ask for God's grace and forgiveness right where we are." So that understanding that living a life in tune with God, unconcerned about others, not propped up by their praise or waiting for them to tell us who we are, that life of solitude is for us not necessarily dependent on whether or not we're alone, right? Because if we're by ourselves, but all we can think about are the people and the places that we're missing, then the solitude is not helping us turn our gaze toward God. And when we become comfortable in solitude, when it becomes a place, a haven of nearness to God, then we no longer have to be afraid of thoughts that might come in the middle of the night, that come to us and make us fearful, or the fear of being alone. So those fears, when we practice a habitude of solitude, of being alone with who we are before God, our hearts will be more at ease and free.